Day, June the 4th. Man, already 4 days into June. Rob Brown. Brendan
June
Martin,
4th?
Ocala. June 4th. That's the day before June 5th.
It's already summertime.
I know. It'll be 89 today. Why don't they just say 90?
Because it's not 90.
But like a football player's listed it. My friend Mark Pera that played college football at Auburn, offensive lineman, said, Mark, they would list you at 6'6", 299.
Yes.
Why just say 310? Drives me crazy.
Well, that's what they do now everywhere. Now,
I know.
Rob. So you got to add a little bit more. But you know what? You get the 89, and it feels like
100.
it's the feels like. That's where they get the extra.
Yeah,
so.
the feel like number. Rob Brown here with you at Brendan Martin. We got a great show today. Franz Beard, the Iron Duke.
Panama Jack.
Panama Jack, with that, check out that lid he's wearing, and mine with the pileated woodpecker. And Oakley McFerrin, the intern, going to join us. Also Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net up in Fayetteville with Vince Ferrara from the Hill in Knoxville. And boy, they've got a super regional going on in Fayetteville this weekend. Hey, take a picture with your phone of the QR code, okay? We're on X, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. 7 channels simultaneously broadcasting. And then Brendan cuts up reels, puts stuff out. And this channel, it just goes non-stop. It's
non-stop.
It's beyond the Energizer Bunny. It's content on the SEC, updated. And if there's big events, we can go live. Well, we got a great channel here, executive producer Brendan Martin. So buckle up, get ready. We're going to talk some SEC and college sports with some pretty smart noodles, some smart, good eggs. Franz Beard.
Noodles and eggs. That feels like faux.
Yeah, when you're a kid, they say you got a good noodle on your head. And I'm like, what? Or in the country, they'll always say, that old Franz now, he's a good egg. And I'm like,
good egg there, Franz Beard.
He's wearing the hat. He looks like the Godfather. He's like, you're going to make us an offer to talk about some SEC football.
Tell them you were at Grandma's house.
I love it. Hey, Franz.
He's the new commissioner of the SEC.
Yeah, and Oakley, we were last night on the Tuesday night edition, the Lowdown with Lauren Meadows. Lauren's in Paris on vacation, and so we had Buddy Martin, Franz Beard, Brendan Martin.
He is on assignment.
On assignment. Oakley, you'll learn that when you're out. Yes. You're on assignment, special assignment. And Franz, I'm gonna throw the first meatball to you to knock out of the park, but we got we had 13 teams in the regional. For the NCAA out of 64. And I think interest is really increasing. There's a lot of interest. And thankfully, we've got a lot of the games on TV. Some schools like Auburn were relegated to ESPN+. Can't quite understand it. I guess they'll get all their games in the Super Regional probably be on TV. But, Franz, how do you explain – I know we talked about Florida last night, but there's good baseball all over the country. But was it lack of pitching, lack of depth? What was it that got 9 of the 13 teams bounced out, including Vandy?
Well, the Vandy one is the biggest surprise of all because I quite frankly thought they had everything it takes to win a national championship. And playing in their park is so difficult for visiting teams because they've got enough left-handed pitching to make you put in your righties, and they always that's a canyon between right center and center field. So a lot of balls that are home runs in a lot of places in the SEC go there to die. And I thought the park set up well for them. And what happened with Wright State is unexplainable. I never saw it coming with them. Ole Miss was on borrowed time anyway because they just really didn't have the pitching, and it's the same thing that happened with Florida. Florida had to use up too much the first day, to get out of the East Carolina game, and then you come up with the problem they had on the third day. Kevin O'Sullivan, I know, he threw too many F-bombs in there. But quite frankly, he was right. This was a second straight day that they had tried to that they moved the game to another time when you've already set your whole schedule. By this, you've got your guys at the ballpark, they're getting loose, everything like this. And then they come in and say, okay, well, it's going to be an hour later. Well, it's one thing for it to be the weather. That weather happens. But to come in there and just say, well, these other guys, they didn't get to wake up this morning and get their orange juice at the proper time because they were up so late last night.
That's right. Yes.
Grow up.
Well, you know who's got something to say about that, don't you? Oakley, you remember this guy? The world's smallest violin, Mr. Krabs. From SpongeBob SquarePants. Who gives a damn? That's tough. That's life. And I mean, I'm not mad at Kevin O'Sullivan, friends. I mean,
well, I wish he hadn't thrown so many F-bombs.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Oakley,
the thing that what really upset me about it was the way that Scott Strickland worded it when he's sure, apologize. That's the manly thing to do is to come in there and say, look, I was wrong, shouldn't have, but Kevin O'Sullivan, Scott Strickland should have said, the circumstances were bad, and Coach O'Sullivan was right to protest, but he protested too, he protested too hard, too long, etc. like that.
Yeah,
that's what should have been said.
Yeah, and I would have said something like, "I've got my coach's back," and I don't like, the language could have been better. But Oakley, you're a competitor. I mean, you're competing in classes. You're competing. You played. His high school quarterback was Marcel Reed, the quarterback at A&M. Friends, God bless, man. We're in the heat of the moment, things happen. What is the old saying, friends? If anyone ever had a tape recorder near Coach K, at least 200 F-bombs were dropped in a typical Duke.
Oh my gosh. You would think that he invented the word.
Yeah.
I mean, and I got to tell you what, one of my friends, his property backs up to the Krzyzewskis, and he says, you really want to hear it, you ought to hear Mickey.
His wife.
So, but anyway, people use that word, and it's used regularly. I mean, my gosh, if you watch Landman with Billy Bob Thornton, you can't, there is, I don't think there have been 7 sentences in season 1 that did not. I think all the sentences in season 1 that didn't have the F word in it were all with one sentence words like yes or no.
Yeah. Friends, and Oakley, jump in here. Like, look, I agree. I've been on the sidelines in games and stuff where they have the parabola of the mic. You don't want to get anywhere near a coach. But did you go watch the Vandy boys since you're home from Auburn in Nashville? Did you go out there? Are there black ribbons around campus? I mean, did they? That was a shocker for Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that shocked me there, like Fran said, that was a team that was probably the favorite and probably should have won the national championship. So that's a shocker in itself. But the fact that, they probably should have lost to Wright State the first time and came back and lost again because, the fair foul, whatever you want to say it was. So for them to come out and, virtually, in a sense, go 0-3, that's a big-time shocker. And they were never in that Wright State game, the second one, until the 9th inning. So it's just a shocker to see them get bounced that way with such little fight.
Well, Oakley, they had 3 hits, Vandy, in the first game that they won. And then the next one they lost, they only had 3 hits. There was no hitting to back them up. All right, got to ask you about Georgia. And, Blind Squirrel Sports is on here from Buena Vista, Georgia, not too far from Columbus. I used to do stories in Buena Vista. Now, the locals called it Buena Vista. And I'm like, what? It's Buena Vista.
That's like Vienna. Everywhere else is Vienna, Georgia.
Yeah, Dooley County, I might add.
Home of the Vienna sausage.
Yeah. All right. So Oakley, looking around the SEC, there's 13 teams. Franz gave a great take. What's your take on outside of Vandy teams like Ole Miss? He's right. Georgia. That's a program with Wes Johnson that I think has a lot of buy in it.
I mean, I think they're also like similar to Ole Miss. There's just a lack of pitching. I mean, you let up 13 runs. You're up 2 runs in the ninth and you give up 4 runs. That's inexcusable. And it's also just such a challenge. If you have to win back-to-back elimination games, the odds of that happening are just so low. Because by the last game, you've played 4 games in the weekend, and it's just hard to win against elite teams. And there's elite teams everywhere around the country. I mean, Murray State, a 4 seed, is in the Super Regionals. So, I mean, it's really – and they beat Ole Miss twice. They deserved it. So it just speaks to how good baseball has become across the entire country and at all different levels.
Yeah, and I love it. We're going to do some rapid fire stuff while Franz is on here with us for the first half of the show. And then Oakley, we're going to have Dudley Dawson from hogville.net and Vince Ferrara from Knoxville. They got a super regional in Fayetteville this weekend. It's going to be tickets. People will be giving blood plasma to get into that one. Franz, quickly, from the meetings down in Destin last week, Cliff Note version, there was a lot of talk, a lot of banter back and forth. What were your takeaways that, okay, I feel great about where we're going next, if any?
Well, many centuries ago, William Shakespeare wrote a play about the SEC meetings. It's called Much Ado About Nothing. And they went there, and I give them credit. They went there with good intentions. But as my grandma, the late, great, wonderful Ivy Van Sickle used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And they went there with good intentions.
Yeah.
And as we saw once again, anytime you get 16 school presidents together, you got chaos. Actually, you got chaos anytime you got one together, even by himself. But when you get 16 of them discussing sports, you have chaos. The presidents need to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
The athletic directors need to come in there with a mandate to their coaches. This is what we are going to do. And then the coach, it is not up to you to bitch and moan about it. We're going to do this. We need a 9-game schedule.
Yeah.
But we don't have one because many of the have-nots in the conference, and there are several, say, well, you know what? If we can't play the Wenatchee Convent and Homeless Shelter for homecoming, we may not get a bowl game.
That's exactly what it is.
And the bowl game isn't important really because if you go to Birmingham and you lose, you have to spend another week there. That's the sad part about it is that you lose, you got to stay an extra week up there, and oh my. Anyway, here's the thing: the bowl game is important only because you get 15 extra practices.
Yeah.
People think these bowl games are, they're for the kids. We're going to reward these kids. Yeah, you're going to have to practice for 15 days. All your buddies have gone home for Christmas, and all your friends are out hunting, with Rob. They're out in the duck blind, hoping that the ducks don't have
Smart
guns
people
to shoot back at them. Yeah.
Well, Franz, I on that 9-game schedule, Oakley, what's the general consensus among your peers about playing 9 versus 8? And then that leads to the next question: should you guarantee 4 spots, which I'm totally opposed to?
The problem with, I think, the 9-game schedule, I would be for it, but I think the problem with that is I think you'd see these non-conference games, like we've got LSU Clemson this year, things of that nature. I think those would go away because if you're playing 9 SEC games, why would you schedule Ohio State when you could lose that game and go into that 9-game SEC schedule already down a game? And I also think it's unfair to if people are scheduling 3 throwaway games for those 3 non-conference games, it's unfair to the South Carolinas who have to play Clemson, the Floridas who have to play Florida States, because you're not going to get rid of those rivalries.
Yeah.
So I think that leaves them at a disadvantage unless you're making sure everyone has to schedule a Power 4 opponent.
Well, or Georgia having to play Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
And the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech is an ascending program with Brent Key, who, by the way, was the last Georgia Tech player, that group of players that beat Georgia 3 years in a row under former coach George Resume O'Leary, who was a hell of a coach. But I got to ask you this one, and then I'm going to bounce it back to Franz. Oakley, I heard yesterday, and I don't know if this is true, but I'm wearing this hat, so I think it is true. It would be an additional $8 million for each SEC school if they added the 9th game. What about that? That'll take care of softball and women's basketball.
Yeah, if money talks at the end of the day, the school's going to do what's best for them money-wise, especially with money playing such a role. So
not best for the school, but best for the money.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then I'm sure the 9-game schedule will come soon.
Friends, we have it on good accord that you were born Nathan Huffines. Any reason why you changed your name to Nathan, Arizona? Would you buy furniture from a place called Unpainted Huffines? Remember that great line in Raising Arizona? I got to ask you, and I think that went way over Franz's Panama hat. But I won a 9th game. But at the same time, it's conflicting. You know,
it's not, because what happens is if you play the 9-game schedule, you're doing the best thing you can do for SEC fans, and the heck with everybody else, because you get 3 permanent opponents, and then you're going to play every single team in the league home and away every 4 years. Yeah. It makes too much sense not to go there, because you look at Georgia. Georgia has never played a game in College Station. Texas A&M has only played 1 game in Athens. Florida, meanwhile, I think has played Texas A&M 5 times. Now, granted, Aggie Land is not exactly the garden spot of the earth. You go there and you see a lot of brown stuff, and you see a lot of buildings and stuff like that. It's don't have a lot of good places to go eat. And that's why I love Texas. I mean, my gosh, so many good places. You can go across the Colorado River, across into Bubba Land, and you got a dozen places that serve chicken fried steak like you've never eaten it. Anyway, back to the main idea. The 9-game schedule makes sense, and it does knock off that freebie game. Play the Division I AA team, play that team in the spring. That makes too much sense to do it. Coaches hate the spring game, but you talk to them about actually playing a game that matters, they like that. They say, well, somebody might get injured. Somebody gets injured in spring practice. Nobody gets injured in the spring game, but we get lots of injuries in spring practice. Play a real game. You're going to have fewer injuries in a real game anyway, probably. Yeah. But that way, if you lose to the 1AA team, it doesn't count. Nobody cares if you lose to it in the spring game. And in the spring game, you can still play everybody, because your third team, typically, unless you're playing North Dakota State, your third team is better than the D1AA teams' first and second teams.
All right. And I see where you're going. And 45 years ago, Doug Barfield brought that up at Auburn and said, hey, let's play Kentucky or Ole Miss at Auburn, he was saying, because we could draw 45, 50,000. Oakley, Francis talking about those 1AA teams, and I think there'd be interest, especially if it's an in-state school. It's essentially a fundraiser for them.
Well, we saw Coach Deion Sanders propose that with Syracuse this past year. Yeah. And I think maybe they're not the guys to propose it, but if some high respected coaches like Kirby Smart, just saying some more proven coaches that hold more weight.
Yes, I see your point. No, you're right.
If they propose that, then I think, and they kind of talked about it, if they do that, then I think that's a thing, and push for it, that's a thing that could happen. I think it'd benefit not only the starters, but you'd also get to see these freshmen, see who's ready to play immediately.
Well, one thing for sure, Franz, I agree with that stat. More players are hurt in practice than in the games. And I don't want players to get hurt. I mean, hell, nobody does, especially those players getting hurt. All right, next topic. Got to ask y'all. The portal. Heard an interesting statistic from Tyler Siskey, who was speaking at the Touchdown Club Memphis Spring Speaker Series Monday night. Something like 66% of players that are going into the portal are staying there indefinitely or going down when they transfer. There's a guy named Dave Bartu that's we're going to have him on the show Friday morning that studies all this analytics, since he has every coach in America, assistant head coach ever, in a database since 2010. And I was talking to Dave yesterday evening, and this stuff will blow your mind, but the average number of starts for a player who transfers from like a Power 4 down, and if he does make it to the NFL, the average number of starts for those players is 1.12 starts in the NFL. Franz, that's a lot to unpack, but you're the unpacker.
Well, here's the thing about the portal. The reality of the portal is probably, I would say, at least 50% of the players in the portal. You got the guys at lower level teams that think they're good enough to play at a power conference. All right, that's probably half of them, and out of that bunch, I'd say probably 30% of them will hook on with a new school. Maybe 35%. Then you got from the power conferences, you got about half of the transfers are guys that say, I didn't get enough playing time, of which maybe 35% of them really didn't, and the others got no playing time because they're not any good. So you end up with this big glop in the middle. You know, it's kind of like the strawberries on one side, the blueberries on the other, and the glop of ice cream in the middle. You know. And it just doesn't work well. You know, it really doesn't. We got to have a new system, and the system has got to be, it's got to be a system that, okay, if my coach doesn't want me anymore, he's still got to pay me, because now we're going to this. So where is all this leading? It's all leading to one basic thing. We got to go to contracts. We have to have contracts for players that say this. If I don't want you, I have to buy out your contract, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't want me, you got to buy out your contract. And guess what? If we're playing a bowl game, or whatever, you got to play in it because you are under contract.
Correct.
And until we get to contracts, we're going to have all this stuff going on, and it's not going to kill college football, but it takes a lot of the joy out of the game. Yeah. Part of the joy of college football for me growing up was because we had freshman teams. I'm old, so we
had them when I was in college.
How old are you?
97.
I thought so.
But anyway, I remember the freshman teams.
We had freshmen. Back then, and you go watch the freshman games at Florida Field, and I was working for the Gainesville Sun, and I'm covering John Reeves, Carlos Alvarez, touchdown Tommy Durrance. They had a guy named Andy Chaney who was almost as good as Carlos, but he had 2 bad knee surgeries that would be minor knee surgeries today, but they killed him. All he did was go own banks and everything like that. He owns a bunch of banks now, and was the head of Barnett Bank, and they got bought out. And then he started another bank, and they got bought out, and he's got another bank now
Franz, what he learned from sports is to be resilient. See, that's the thing.
What you learn from sports is if you can be president of a bank, you can sell it someday.
Yeah. Well, and that's cashing in on your NIL too. Oakley, before Franz checks out, and I'm gonna get him to talk about. He has covered college basketball like very few people. I would say if Bill Raftery was a writer, he'd be like Franz, because Franz sees things that we don't normally see. What are you seeing out there on the landscape in college football, college athletics, that makes you think, okay, because this is how I feel. This is a pothole in the road of life, man. We've been here before. We're going to get through it, but it's sort of like passing a kidney stone right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he hit it right on the head. You have to, it's NFL free agency is what it is. Make everything public, sign contracts, 1-year deals, whatever it may be. And because the transfer portal can be beneficial if used right. Yeah. When we've seen a ton of stories, but sadly we've seen way more stories. Like 40% of FBS players do not find scholarships out of the portal. FBS players, imagine FCS or D2, wow. D3. So it kind of opens your mind to the whole situation and the problem that college sports is in right now. And I'm not worried that, I mean, within the next 5 to 6 years, I think it'll be figured out, hopefully.
I agree. But I like what Blind Squirrel Sports is saying. Without contracts, if you don't have it in writing, you can't do any fighting. And that's for either side. And Oakley, you're right. In the NFL, full transparency is what avoids problems.
Well, here's the thing, guys. If we're going to use the NFL model, then we got to have contracts. Okay. I'm one of these people. I got to admit, I'm one of these people that I think the idea of okay, when I remember when I was in college, having $100 extra was a big deal, and the way this game is set up nowadays with all the NIL money, now it's legal. I mean, people have always been cheating. I mean, people have always been spreading money around. The one thing that's missing, though, is the loyalty factor. Because back in the day, if somebody was giving you this money, I covered the ACC for many years, and one very prominent school that had a very prominent player whose names will be withheld to protect the guilty. I'm with him one day outside his dormitory, and he goes to his mailbox, opens it up, there's a brown envelope. And he opens it up, and there's a white envelope in there. And inside that white envelope are $500, all in 5s, 10s, and 20s. Mm. And this is in the 70s now, so $500 was a lot more money buying wise than it is now. And I said, "Who's that from?" He said, "I don't know." And he said, "Where's it from?" He said, "Statesville." I said, "Statesville?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Last week it was from Hickory." He said, "The week before that it was from Wilmington." I said, "You don't know who sends it?" And he says, "Nope." And he says, "But we get it every week." I said, "Does Coach so-and-so know about it?" He says, "No." And nobody's going to tell him either. Yeah. And I said, "It's all in 5s, 10s, and 20s." He says, "That's right. If you go with $100 bills in one of the restaurants around the campus, everybody's going to know about it.
And so it's going to draw attention."
20s.
Yeah.
And so cheating has gone on forever. Yeah. That part isn't going to change. The part that needs to change is you can't have players making more money than their assistant coaches.
Correct.
For example, you've got Carson Beck's getting $4 million. Do you think for 1 second he is going to respect his offensive coordinator who's not making even $1 million? If that offensive coordinator says, you know what, Carson, you gotta remove some of your tattoos. You gotta quit going out with the Cavender twins. Of course, I heard they dumped him anyway. But you got to park the Lamborghini and focus on football. Yada yada yada. Do you think he's actually going to listen? It's going to go in one ear out the other, because he's going to say, "I make 4 times more money than you. What are you ordering me around for?"
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Friends, before you check out, we got Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, and Vince Ferrara coming in. We're going to talk about that big super up there. When in the last minute here, before you go, when's your book coming out? How close are you?
Getting really close to the end of giving Buddy and Carlton Reese the chapters and hoping that it's legible enough that they don't look like they slash their wrists over it.
Yeah.
But I see that hat, Bud Light. I mean, my gosh.
Well, I'm thinking about you. I just want to jump in real fast. I know you got guests lined up and say good morning to you, Rob and Oakley. And I love the hat, and I made a decision as a Gator Bait. Well, I have to ask the president; he's on there too.
Yeah, to watch what you say. I'm on you.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. That I love the fedora, so we're gonna come out with a line of Gator Bait Fran Spirit hats. Says Gator Bait, never old hats. Okay,
I don't know what that means.
But old hat means something that's out of time. It's the phrase when your old hat means it's past. It's jumped.
We're gonna have to put a QR code with it.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I'm wearing my Larry fedora.
Well, because this hat here, and by the way, friends, I expect you to have one of these soon. Rob Brown is buying some. We just got a few in. We don't have many. Brendan had one on last night. Had a good show last night. And just want to say, I still want to know more about the University of Florida president. Santa's not coming to town. Santa,
nice.
We talked about it last night.
What you did there.
And with that, I'm getting out of the way and let you guys go back to it. I want to get that out soon on that hat. Never old hat, Fred Spirit. Okay.
Thank you,
Dad.
Thank you. It is a good looking hat. Oh, Franz,
it's pretty good when you get like a drive-by guest, Buddy Martin, who just pops in.
I know.
It's just Buddy Martin just coming in. It's just Fran's beer just popping in.
I know. Last night was fun on that show because we were all over the hemisphere. But Franz,
ADD Sports, baby,
and I'm the president. So forgot what we were talking about. No,
there
Franz, tell people about your book, and I'll let you go. And then Dudley and Vince will be on here, and they're going to duke it out on the super. But I'm excited about this book. So just tell people quickly how they can get it, though, when it comes out. That's the last thing.
We're trying to get it finished up now, and you know, these last 3 chapters are the hardest ones to write because writing the ones about, for example, the game, you know, the games leading up, like the UConn game, the Texas Tech game, the Auburn game, the Houston game. I don't think there's ever been a team that had 4 tougher games going into the championship to win a championship than Florida did with those 4. I mean, the talk about a deck that was stacked against them. My gosh, if Florida had the guys that Duke had to play, Florida, you know, but that's probably why Duke lost.
Yeah,
because they had not been challenged, and of course, didn't bother me that they lost, just like it didn't bother me that Georgia's baseball team lost. But just the same, it's going to be about we're taking you from game 1, actually before then, because back in the summer of last year, Todd Golden and I were having breakfast, and he looked at me and he says, "We got some dudes." Can't tell you what he did. Florida won partly because they had the best combination of roster. They could play you any style because they had enough bigs, they had enough small guys. They could play any roster. But the big thing that comes out of this is you look at how these guys really, really were the essence of what a team is all about. You know.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, I think that the Duke gets the Duke discount, unfortunately, all the time.
Dick Vitale. I got to tell you something. Dick Vitale, if you saw him go into it after the ACC championship game, he did everything but offer to bear Cooper Flagg's firstborn male child.
Okay. Yeah, that that's
so. Franz, you're basically, the book is going to be the breath of the year of from like, what you're saying, sort of that conversation in the beginning with Todd Golden framing up the beginning. We got some dudes, and then you're gonna kind of take us through the season, or
it's going to be like, Brendan. It's going to go have like a funnel effect. The small games at first, but then we get in the conference and it widens, and then the last half of the book is going to really start with what happened in Nashville for the SEC tournament. Cool. Florida played 3 brilliant games in a row and had 3 blowout wins. And what was amazing to me, guys, was how at every stop, everybody's predicting that Florida is going to go down. They really did. I mean, we get to the SEC tournament, and everybody's predicting that Tennessee or Auburn's going to win it. Well, Florida beat Tennessee. Florida killed Alabama, and then the next thing on. So it was a struggle, but yet that struggle. What is I hear you say it often, Rob. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, that's right.
And Florida got better because the games were tougher.
Yeah, and friends, I'm totally.
And I want to say, Rob, and you want to say it too. I think is that you're going to cover the allegations and stuff at the beginning of the year at Todd Gold. I feel like that's part of the story that galvanized the team. Buddy said that early on. You said that early on. We had a discussion on this show early on about that. So I just wanted to. You're going to put that in the beginning.
This is in there.
Give me a 30-second answer, because we got guests stacking up on us, and we're going to.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing I will say about that. They brought in an independent investigative firm from California that had no dog in this fight, and they went through it, and they came out of there and they said there is nothing here. Yeah, which is what I was saying from the beginning. I hate quoting Hillary Clinton, but this was a nothing burger.
Yeah, it was. Well, friends, I mean, it's going to be an awesome book. We hadn't seen a book like this in a long time. So, look, thank you, and we'll be back on with you next week. But I'm buying a copy, and I just want you to autograph it for me. All right?
I'll sign it for you, and I'll give Brendan one too, so that he can keep it and use it. Use it to, it works well in the bathroom. Really does.
It'll be a great book. All right,
thanks, Francis.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
We got them stacked up here.
We got them stacked up, Rob. Let's hit Winter Timber, and then we'll bring in our guest.
Let me say something real quick. Winter Timber Outdoors, located in Athens, Alabama. That's on the top of the state, and that's up there between Florence and Huntsville. Open every day of the week. And, right now hunting season's kind of at a pause, but it's all the preseason stuff. Your deer stands, everything, your food plots, you got to work on all that now. All your gear, I got all the Yeti gear, coolers, outdoor gear, polos, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama. They've got the Sitka gear like nobody else. Everything, and they're building a new 13,000 square foot store on University Drive in Auburn. Opens up in early August is what it looks like right now, but their plan is to grow in the footprint that is the SEC. Okay, so let's bring in Dudley Dawson. Oakley, this here feller from Fayetteville.
Dudley was then. We lost his video. Hey, Dudley, sir, make it live again, Mr. Dawson.
And then Vince Ferraro will be on in a second too from Knoxville. But Oakley, what you just heard, you see Franz writing a book. You read a lot of books, or do you look mainly online?
I'm mainly online reading articles. It's how I get most of my information. But I did read who was the Indiana basketball coach?
Bobby Knight.
Yeah, I read a book about him the other day. So
there you go. I mean, and Franz waxes eloquent so well about. He's been covering 50 plus years, ACC, SEC. And I think we need to read more as a society. It helps tremendously. And Franz is going to go Brendan said, hey, we got to do a pop-up show on a Friday back in September when allegations against Todd Golden came out. And Dudley, you're
sideways.
You're sideways. We got to, but
if we're on your phone too, Dudley, you got to turn us off. It's like being on the radio. You can't listen and you can't at the same time.
And hit airplane mode too, so no
turn
calls.
The sound down. It's like being on the delay.
Boys, I'm in a hotel room in Little Rock this morning, and
I feel like you've got like a web page open where you're monitoring our show at the same time. We're hearing an echo.
I love the shirt and the hat. Oh, yeah. Dudley. We got. I mean, hey, let's get going. I know. I was wondering. I was going. I hope today is Wednesday. I was worried that I didn't send you the right stuff, but let's talk about the Super Regional coming up in Fayetteville. Vince Ferrara will be on in a minute, and that y'all been talking about it. Now it's going to happen. This 4 out of 13 left, and Tennessee and Arkansas are 2 of those 4. I'm talking about for the Supers.
You know, I don't root for teams, but I root for narratives. I root for stories. I root for things to be interesting, and that's certainly I'm going to get all 3 this weekend with Tennessee and Arkansas. It seems kind of appropriate that Tony won one last year, and Dave Van Horn has the opportunity to win one this year, but he has to go through Tony. And I know that everybody likes to do the villain and the hero and all that. But these 2 guys respect each other a lot. Tony was basically mentored by Dave Van Horn. I think he'll tell you that, and his dad, obviously. And so I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. The atmosphere should be unbelievable. I wouldn't be surprised if Arkansas sets an attendance record this weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I think it was 7 years ago on a Sunday afternoon, 7 or 8, when Tony Vitello went to Knoxville. Vince, welcome aboard on this Wednesday morning. We got Dudley Dawson holed up in a hotel in Little Rock. He had to get out of Fayetteville because the chaos is just too much as Tony Vitello and the national champion Tennessee Volunteers make their way on a checkerboard orange and white journey to the far northwest corner of Arkansas. Butch Thompson said it last week. I think Tennessee can defend their title. Man, how about that regional, what they did against the Demon Deacons? Those were some damn good games.
Whew. Yeah, great to be on with you guys. Tennessee has now strung together some good performances between Hoover, 2 or 3 games. They had the dud against Vanderbilt, obviously, but played really well in the first 2 games. Had their moments in the game 6 against Wake Forest and the Demon Deacons forced that game 7. And then, Tennessee answered the bell after, Wake Forest jumped out on them in that game 7 as well. But explosive inning. They're doing some in the 4th with 7 runs. They're doing some things that they were doing more last year with comebacks, with extending when teams creep closer to them. They're able to extend. They're getting better bullpen pitching. They've improved in defending the run game. These are all things that were issues the first time they went to Fayetteville to close out the regular season. So they're not perfect by any means. They're capable of being 2 in barbecue in Fayetteville, but I also think they're capable of getting back to Omaha and doing damage. So just matter of matchups day to day, how it all changes in baseball, but they're in a better spot now than they were a few weeks ago when they went to Fayetteville the first time.
Yeah. Oakley, jump in here with Vince Ferrara from Sports Animal in Knoxville.
Last time Tennessee went into Fayetteville, they were in a little bit of a slump per se, had lost I think 4 of the last 5 series or something of that nature. And I think that was kind of an anomaly game for Liam Doyle. He got hit up that game, let up 8 runs. Game 1, I think, obviously, I'm expecting him to come out and be who he's been the whole year. So that puts them in a great spot for game 1. Then it's all about stealing games 2 or 3, and then they're back in Omaha, and they'd probably be the favorite if they got back to Omaha. So,
yeah. Well, Liam Doyle, to your point, had 2 rough outings. He did in the SEC tournament, and then also in Fayetteville. He closed out. Not only did he have a great start in the regional, he started the first game against Miami, Ohio, looked his old form, but then he closed out the last 2 1/3. That was really an amazing scene and storyline when they brought him into the game to close out against Wake Forest. Just being there, you could see it was a storyline going in. Tony Vitello had mentioned that Doyle was kind of in his ear that he wanted to pitch and be available, and Tony Vitello, wasn't committal, but then he was available on game day, and you could hear, because we're close to the fans are talking about it and wondering and looking down at the bullpen. Are they going to actually do this and bring Doyle in, or when are they going to do it? And then in the seventh, he was the only one warming up. You're like, man, this might actually happen and happen soon. And then he came in and he was absolutely lights out, energized, slammed the door shut emphatically on Wake. And it gave not only did they effectively get out of the inning and then hold Wake Forest where they were when they had gotten to within 3 runs, but it gave the team new energy. I think it took away hope from Wake Forest. It was an incredible full scope impact that he had in that game. Bottling it up and starting a game that way is a little bit different, especially against that Arkansas team that had success against them. As long as he's not too overly motivated or emotional about succeeding against Arkansas, because in the SEC tournament, he was Tony Vitello mentioned that he thought he was trying to make up for the Arkansas game. As long as he doesn't try to do that, you'll see the best Liam Doyle in Fayetteville. Dudley,
jump in here too, because the Hogs have the SEC Player of the Year, and man, that's Heisman Trophy basically in baseball.
Yeah, I'm looking for, as I was saying earlier, probably saying it, echoing. I'm really looking forward.
You sound great now.
both of the teams are coming in on high notes. Arkansas blitzed its field last weekend, got great pitching from its starters, from the back of its bullpen, what it had to use. I'm interested, obviously with the situation with Tennessee's catcher. Will Liam Doyle go ahead and throw the first game, or will it be like they were when they came here on the 15th? Will he throw the second game? Same way with Arkansas. Zach Root had a bit of a stumble against Tennessee, but he came back and threw fantastic in the regional. Gage Wood is the X factor here. He's a guy who hadn't got a lot of starts this year because of injuries, but he was absolutely electric. 13 strikeouts. I root for those guys to go against each other in the second game, because that would be all out psychotic chaos.
Dudley, actually this is for Oakley. Oakley, you look at Arkansas. You talked about a program in the last 20 years. It's a model of consistency. They have been to Omaha. They expect it every year. What do you think is going to happen up here when these teams get together? Because, the atmosphere, there'll be 45, 50,000 people at those 3 games. I know the fire marshal doesn't like me saying that.
This, like I said earlier, it's a Goliath matchup. Tennessee's probably been the best team over the last 5 years, or since COVID, probably in college baseball. With that being said, the consistency we've seen from Arkansas, them being a top-tier program, they've had some letdowns in the past 5-6 years, but these are the 2 favorites I think left in the tournament. I think the winner will be the favorite coming out of it. So we could be looking at a potential championship almost type of matchup, but we're getting in the super regionals, which is really something special for the sport.
Deep thoughts by Jack Handy there. That's very good. I think you're right. Vince, can you address that from Blind Squirrel Sports in Buena Vista, Georgia, about Nico? Do you have any thoughts on Nico posting something on Instagram about missing the, quote, real ones, end quote, at Tennessee? Not sure I have all the facts, if I do, but I believe he already regrets leaving Rocky Top. The orange and white checker. Who wouldn't? He's paying 13.5% income tax now.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, as always, from Blind Squirrel Sports.
I love that guy.
I did not see that, so I don't have the context on it, so reluctant to try to interpret it. Well, I hadn't seen that from Nico. Obviously been into baseball, and then everything from from Destin. So I did not see that IG post. We'll try to look it up. Maybe we can comment on it next week.
I have a little bit on that. Saw it, and I think that what he's talking about in the context is that since he left Tennessee, there have been some shots taken, I guess, that from fans and others, and the real ones, as I'm told by kids these days, the real ones are the ones that stay with you, the ones that support you. I think that's what he's saying. I don't think he regrets leaving, but I do think he regrets the way it went down.
I do too, and I tell you, he's really going to do it when he gets his W-2. I mean, that's. I think that's going to get it. He starts looking at paying 13.25% state income tax, whereas Tennessee doesn't have one.
Hey, real life sucks, man. Real life sucks.
That's right. All right. I'll say this too. This matchup, Dave Van Horn. This is what year 21. Tony Vitello has been a head coach. Is it 7 or 8 years, Vince? He's been okay. And I remember that Sunday afternoon on SEC Network when it was announced he was going to Tennessee. I want, I'll start with Dudley. I want to ask him and we'll be rapid fire in these last 8 minutes. How good was the SEC after the regionals compared to how good you thought the league was going in?
Well, I believe that Dave Van Horn had a real good point that there are a lot of SEC teams, obviously 13 that got in. A lot of them felt really good about themselves and didn't come out with maybe the urgency that you would have thought they did. The teams that did are the 4 teams left. You had a couple that lost along the way. LSU had to fight through Little Rock, who, at one point was, I think, 23-31. And so I think that, it's like someone I was talking to yesterday, no matter what sport it is, the rest of the country has SEC fatigue. The rest of the country is celebrating. There's only 4, and it could only be 3 that get there. It's a great baseball conference. It's still the best baseball conference in the country. But it's one of those things, man. If you aren't ready to play on that day, then they can take you out because the portal. I mean, what is this? It's half Mississippi, half Tennessee coming to Arkansas this weekend, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a good take, Vince. And then I'm gonna go back and get Oakley's take on it. But Dudley just said a lot that makes absolute 100% sense.
Yeah, real quick, I totally agree that everybody is celebrating the fact that the SEC had carnage in the regional with 9 teams getting eliminated. And yeah, 3 is the max that they could get to Omaha. The ACC, with their 5 teams currently, they could max out at 4, which is what happened last year. So in theory, I guess you could potentially have 7 of the 8 from the 2 conferences, whereas last year was 8 out of 8. But yeah, it has been disappointing. And the ACC's had teams 2 and 3 seeds elevate. The SEC, the only ones that are left standing were the national seeds. So you didn't have any of those teams that you thought were dangerous as 2 or 3 seeds elevate and win their regional. So it's been disappointing to this point. But I am so sick of the fatigue, as Dudley mentioned, around the country and people making correlations to football. Oh, look at I thought strength of schedule mattered, huh? Why didn't the SEC get any automatic berths into Omaha and all that kind of nonsense just because, what's happening with football?
Oakley, your take on what they both said, because
I think they hit on the head. I mean, there's always the whole country celebrates when the SEC loses. I think we saw that in football a little bit this year. People wanted to claim the Big Ten's better conference and whatnot. Shouldn't even close, but I think with baseball, we saw a lot of teams come out, like Dudley said, without a sense of urgency. Like Vanderbilt, Texas, Georgia, those 3 teams had no business losing. LSU played with their food. They were down 5-1 to Little Rock in an elimination game. That should never happen. So I think it was a lack of. I think a lot of guys got too high, built too big of an ego for these teams. They felt so good coming in. We had a lot of complete teams the SEC this year.
Yeah, North Carolina is another one that I think is a favorite. And if Arkansas gets there, I look forward to Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson coming to the College World.
There won't no distraction there. Okay. We only got a few minutes left, guys. Vince, rapid fire. Got a lot of Tennessee fans that watch this. And in Memphis, I had my friend John David Baddour, who's a lifelong Vol. He said, this is the best 30 minutes of the week for me because living in Memphis, we get the split end of the stick when it comes to coverage by the media. Anything going on up in Knoxville that they should know about, and how do they follow you?
Yeah, just real quick on this, and Dudley kind of mentioned it earlier with the pitching, TBD on how they do it, whether it'll be Liam Doyle game one. I think so, because when he pitched the other night, it kind of works as a bullpen that is typical. Plus the series starts a day later, Saturday. So they have all their options. I think they go back to Doyle game one, Marcus Phillips game two, and then maybe AJ Russell game three, TBD. Their starting catcher, Canaan Peebles, he was ejected from that game 7 in the regional, so he will be suspended for game one. Stone Lawless, who was a midweek catcher and played some in SEC play early in the year, he has a over 300 batting average for the season, but a lot of that was the midweeks. He struggled offensively in SEC play, so that's something to look at as for game one. And then defense has got to be clean for Tennessee. They cannot give Arkansas extra outs. That won't work. And just this team is getting more clutch hitting than it was a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the improvements. So that'll be big for them too. You can follow me on all the socials, Vince Sports, VINCE Sports. We had Danny White on today. We're talking about collective bargaining, everything from Destin, that podcast at 991thesportsanimal.com in the podcast section. Our friend Jimmy Himes, Rob, he was a guest today. Nice. 38th year in Destin covering the SEC spring meeting, so we had him on today, and then Coach Vitello will join us tomorrow on the show too. So
we retweeted you, Vince, so we'll see what's out there.
Hey, and I have two quick things. Number one, if you are from Tennessee and you're coming to Fayetteville this weekend, be advised that the Walmart shareholders neighborhood meetings are here this weekend. So if you're coming in Thursday, just good luck.
Is that why you're in Little Rock?
I'll warn our listeners.
I want to come in Friday. And just one thing I want to say, because I think it has to do obviously with Tennessee. I understand that Wake Forest's head coach is a really good man. He got into the thing. Tempers were heated, but you cannot call in this day and age. You cannot call somebody a farting Frenchie. You just cannot do it.
Yeah. And look, and by the way, Oakley, if you noticed with Vince, Buddy, Franz, Dudley, Brendan, if they don't know something, they go, I don't know. Let me go back.
Because we've been burned.
Yeah. And that's the number one
we
thing.
learned when we were young to shut up when you don't know something, because you get called out real fast.
Oh, I'll never forget, as a young TV reporter, our sports director goes, I was at the Auburn baseball game. I've got the scoop on who the new Auburn basketball coach is.
I'll never be the smartest man in the room, but I'm smart enough to know that I'm married above my head, outkicked my coverage with my beautiful wife, Petra, and that if I don't know something, it's just best to be quiet.
Yeah, exactly. We don't.
That's in marriage and
silence.
That's right. Great stuff as always. Hey, Mother Teresa said it best. We can't do everything, but we can all do something. Most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And find an organization wherever you live, like People Love in Nashville, Calvary Street Ministry in Memphis. Go out and make a positive difference every day. Greatest producer, greatest guest, greatest fans of the world. Check us out tonight. Love you all.
Only on this show do we quote Mother Teresa at the end of a sports show.
That's right.
Welcome to ADD Sports. Good night, John Boy.
Fan. Y'all, good night. Good morning.